Inflation acts as an invisibility tax, silently eroding purchasing power and reshaping daily life. When prices rise faster than wages, households adjust their choices, inequality increases, and confidence in economic stability weakens. Understanding inflation reveals how small price increases can profoundly affect long-term social behavior and economic structures. The lens focuses on a single dollar bill resting on a sidewalk, a familiar icon of stability that is slowly becoming an illusion. We begin with a quiet, unsettling truth. There is a tax that no legislature ever votes on, yet it collects from every citizen with ruthless efficiency. It is the inflation tax, an invisible thief that steals the value of time and labor without the need for a single IRS form. For decades, the global economy operated under the assumption of low volatility and predictable prices. But today, the hum of the printing press and the snarl of broken supply chains have birthed a phantom that devours purchasing power. As we watch the numbers on the gas pump and the grocery receipt climb, we are witnessing a fundamental restructuring of wealth. This is not merely about rising costs. It is about the silent transfer of value from the hands of the saver to the ledgers of the debtor. In this documentary, we peel back the layers of the consumer price index to reveal the machinery of devaluation. We explore how a currency can retain its shape while losing its soul, and how this process reshapes the very fabric of our society. The sun rises over a nation that is working harder than ever, only to find that the finish line of financial security is being moved further away by the invisible hand of monetary expansion. The signs of crisis are rarely dramatic at first. They begin as subtle shifts in the rhythm of daily life. We see it in shrinkflation, where the price stays the same but the box gets lighter, a quiet admission that the currency is failing. In the housing market, real estate becomes a frantic hedge against devaluing cash, pushing the dream of ownership out of reach for the working class as institutional investors flood the market with liquidity. Economic indicators start to flicker, the yield curve flattens, and credit default swaps, CDS for emerging markets, begin to climb, signaling that the risk of default is no longer a distant theoretical. In nations like Turkey, the sight of people queuing for subsidized bread becomes a grim reality as the exchange rate collapses. When inflation enters its galloping phase, the velocity of money increases not because the economy is healthy, but because people are desperate to trade their dying paper for anything tangible. This is the stage where the social contract begins to fray at the edges. The middle class, traditionally the bedrock of stability, finds its savings accounts turned into a losing game. The crisis is not just a change in numbers, it is a change in behavior. As the population shifts from a mindset of long-term investment to one of short-term survival. Realizing that in a world of rising prices, the only way to win is to spend before the value vanishes. The mechanism of an inflation shock is often rooted in the delicate balance between liquidity and the productive capacity of the nation. When central banks inject trillions into the financial system, the initial result is a deceptive wealth effect, as stock markets and real estate values soar. However, once that liquidity filters through the system, it meets a reality of finite resources. The shock occurs when the supply of money far outstrips the supply of goods. Interest rates are the traditional brake for this engine, but raising them is a double-edged sword. It crushes the debtor while attempting to save the currency. This creates a liquidity crunch where businesses can no longer afford to borrow, leading to stagflation, a toxic mix of rising prices and falling growth. We also see the exchange rate pass-through effect, where a weakening currency makes every imported necessity more expensive, importing inflation from abroad. As the cost of inputs like energy and raw materials spikes, companies are forced to pass these costs to the consumer, creating a feedback loop known as the wage price spiral. In this mechanical breakdown, the currency acts as a broken yardstick, making it impossible for businesses to plan or for families to budget, turning the simple act of trade into a high-stakes gamble against the central bank's next move. Global case studies provide a haunting preview of the inflation tax's terminal stage. In Argentina, decades of fiscal mismanagement have led to a culture of inflation, where prices change daily and the local currency is treated as a hot potato. In Greece, the lack of monetary sovereignty during its crisis meant it couldn't print its way out, leading to a brutal internal devaluation that crushed the working class. More extreme is the case of Venezuela, where hyperinflation reached levels so astronomical that the currency lost all utility, replaced by barter and foreign black markets. Even the 1997 IMF crisis showed how a sudden collapse in exchange rates could vaporize the life savings of a nation's middle class overnight. These examples reveal a consistent pattern. Inflation is the ultimate regressive tax. It hits the poorest the hardest because they spend a larger percentage of their income on essentials like food and fuel, which are the first to spike. In contrast, the wealthy can pivot into hard assets, gold, foreign currencies, or prime real estate, protecting their purchasing power while the rest of the population sinks. These cases serve as a stern warning that once the genie of inflation is out of the bottle, the social and political costs of putting it back in are often higher than society is willing to pay. Within the United States, the inflation tax is rewriting the American social contract in real time. For decades, the US dollar's status as the global reserve currency provided a shield, allowing the nation to export its inflation to the rest of the world. But that shield is thinning. We see the impact in the affordability crisis of the 2022s, where the costs of the three pillars of the American dream, housing, education, and healthcare, has far outpaced wage growth. This creates a hollowed-out economy. While the headline GDP may look positive, the real wage for the average worker is actually declining. The impact on the individual is a sense of running on a treadmill that is slowly accelerating. As the Federal Reserve raises interest rates to combat the very inflation it helped seed, the cost of servicing personal debt, from credit cards to auto loans, reaches record highs. This pincer movement, rising prices on one side and rising interest costs on the other, is crushing the discretionary income of the middle class. The result is a society where upward mobility is replaced by a desperate struggle for stability, and where the inflation tax effectively redistributes wealth from the young and the working class toward the holders of existing assets and government-protected sectors. Government and central bank responses to inflation often resemble a high-stakes fire drill. The primary tool, increasing interest rates, is designed to reduce liquidity and cool the economy, but it also increases the cost of the government's own massive debt. This creates a fiscal dominance trap, where the central bank may be hesitant to raise rates high enough to truly stop inflation, because doing so would bankrupt the state. Governments also resort to fiscal drag, where they fail to adjust tax brackets for inflation, effectively pushing people into higher tax tiers even though their real purchasing power hasn't increased. We see the implementation of targeted subsidies, or price caps, which often result in shortages rather than relief. When the central bank engages in quantitative tightening, it sucks liquidity out of the markets, causing volatility in the bond market and spiking credit default swaps for corporate debt. These institutional moves are often too little, too late, as they struggle to manage the psychological component of inflation, the inflationary expectations. Once the public believes prices will continue to rise, they act in ways that ensure they do. The policy response becomes a desperate attempt to manage perception as much as reality, often leaving the average citizen feeling like a pawn in a larger game of macroeconomic survival. Navigating the inflation tax requires a fundamental shift in personal survival strategy. In a high inflation environment, holding cash is a guaranteed loss. The goal for the individual is to move from currency to capital. This means identifying assets that possess pricing power, the ability to increase in value or generate income that keeps pace with or exceeds the rate of inflation. Real estate remains a classic hedge, as fixed-rate debt is effectively paid back with cheaper future dollars, while the asset value climbs. Diversification into commodities, inflation-protected securities, or even high-quality equities becomes essential. However, the The most useful insight for the viewer is to invest in human capital. Your ability to provide a unique, high-demand skill is an asset that inflation cannot easily devalue. Additionally, reducing variable rate debt is crucial before interest rates peak. On a day-to-day level, survival involves front-loading necessary purchases, buying durable goods today because they will certainly be more expensive tomorrow. This is a defensive mindset. It is about understanding that in an era of the inflation tax, your greatest enemy is inertia. By recognizing that the nominal value of your bank account is a lie, you can begin to make decisions based on the real value of your labor and your time. The remarkable closing message of this documentary is that inflation is more than an economic indicator. It is a mirror reflecting the health of our civilization. When a society's currency fails, its trust in institutions, in the future, and in its fellow citizens begins to erode. But this crisis also offers a moment of clarity. It forces us to distinguish between price and value, and between wealth and money. The inflation tax is a harsh teacher, but its lesson is one of resilience and the necessity of sound economic foundations. We are at a juncture where we must demand more than just the printing of more paper. We must demand a return to productivity, fiscal discipline, and a currency that honors the labor of those who hold it. The reshaped society that emerges from this period will be one that values tangible results over financial engineering. The viewer's journey does not end with fear, but with an empowered understanding of the mechanics of their world. Wealth is not found in the numbers on a screen, but in the strength of our communities, the ingenuity of our work, and our ability to adapt to a changing landscape. As we look ahead, the goal is not just to survive the inflation tax, but to build a system where the value of a day's work is preserved for the generations to come. As we dig deeper into the societal shifts, we see the gentification of survival. In an inflationary world, even basic necessities become luxury items. We observe this in the rise of the subscription economy, where ownership is replaced by perpetual rent, another form of inflation that locks the consumer into a cycle of extraction. The social fabric is strained as the inflation tax creates a widening gap between those who can hedge and those who cannot. This leads to a rise in civil unrest and political volatility, as people sense the unfairness of a system that devalues their efforts while rewarding speculative behavior. The impact on a single person's life is the loss of time preference. The ability to save for a future goal is replaced by the need to survive the present. This psychological toll is immeasurable. It creates a short-termism that discourages long-term investment in families, education, and community. The insight for the viewer is that to fight the inflation tax, one must also fight the culture of consumption it fosters. Reclaiming the ability to save, even in non-traditional ways, is a radical act of defiance against a system designed to keep you in a state of perpetual debt. We conclude this journey with a vision of a restructured world. The inflation tax is a symptom of a deeper imbalance between our desires and our means, between our debt and our production. But history shows that periods of high inflation are often followed by periods of intense innovation and a return to hard values. As the digital age matures, new technologies and decentralized financial tools offer the possibility of currencies that are not subject to the whims of political expediency. The future of society will be defined by those who can navigate this transition, those who understand that real value is the only true hedge. We leave you with the understanding that while the government can print money, it cannot print trust, it cannot print work, and it cannot print a future. Those are things only we can build. By being informed, by being strategic, and by being resilient, you can protect your life from the silent thief. The sun sets on the old era of easy credit and invisible taxes, and rises on a new age where economic reality can no longer be ignored. The inflation tax has reshaped our society, but it is up to us to decide what that new shape will be. The power to define the future lies not in the printing press, but in the hands of the people who do the work and hold the line.